What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. I am so excited for today's video because in today's video, I'm going to be showing you all how to prepare your garden for fall. Now, the question always comes up, it seems like every single year the question comes up, Luke, I've got my summer garden done, I want to plant a fall crop, how do I amend my beds to get ready for fall? Or, Luke, I pulled out my summer garden, I'm not planning on planting a fall garden, which you should, by the way, but you don't have to if you don't want to. It's your garden, your rules. So totally up to you. Luke, I pulled out my summer garden. I'm not going to plant anything for fall, but I want to get it ready for the next year. How do I do that? That's what we're going to do in today's video, and I really hope that you guys are going to enjoy it. Now, the first thing to start off with is one of the biggest mistakes I see people making is neglecting their soil. Now, this obviously pertains directly to re-amending and remineralizing your soil, and it's a huge mistake I see people making where they just assume I've got compost, I just put my beds and my gardens together, I just grew one crop. I should be able to get by, a year or two without remineralizing or refreshing my beds. Yes, you might get by a year or two and not really notice those results that are bad, but one of the things that's going on under the surface is that you're actually opening up your soil to a lot of bad things that you as a gardener do not want to have. Things like soil-borne insects and diseases. One of the biggest ones are nematodes. Soil-borne nematodes are so prevalent in depleted and malnourished soils. There have been numerous studies shown that when you replenish your soil, remineralize your soil, and keep it fertile, it actually deters nematodes by up to 75%. Nematodes like depleted soil. They really like that anaerobic, untouched, just sad looking soil. So nematodes are something you do not want, especially if you're growing things like broccolis, cabbages, cauliflowers, any of your brassicas. They cause a disease called root knot, and root knot essentially, it basically disables the ability for the plant to uptake nutrients, and it just gets super feeble and weak, and then the crop is done for. And the problem is once you have nematodes, it's very difficult to eradicate. So yes, you can get them and eradicate them, but why not just prevent them in the first place? The next thing that you're going to really welcome into your garden are soil-borne funguses, powdery mildew and blights to be specific. Septoria blight, which is like late blight on your tomatoes. You can get fusarium wilt. You can get a lot of different blights, as well as powdery mildews that start to breed in soil because they're soil-borne. And again, just like nematodes, they really like that kind of untouched, stagnant soil that's not being maintained and really fertile. Because one of the pillars of organic gardening is that when you take care of your soil, and keep it, really nutritious and really fertile, there is a symbiotic relationship that takes place in your soil where your plants feed off of the beneficial bacteria and fungi in your soil. They help each other, right? And in a good ecosystem, the beneficial bacteria and fungi, they actually will keep the bad bacteria and fungi, bad fungi being things like powdery mildews and blights, they actually keep them at bay. There is a balance. Whereas if you're not taking care of your soil, more of those bad funguses like blights and powdery mildews and things like that can really take hold in your soil. Anyone that tells you you can't use too much compost, or that you can use too much compost in your garden, they should be, well, composted. You cannot use too much compost in your garden. We grow in 100% pure compost. Every single year this question comes up, and it's, can I use too much compost? No, you really can't. You cannot use too much compost. It is perfect soil. It pH balances your soil to around 7, which plants love. It helps to give nutrients as well as a place for beneficial bacteria and fungi to call home in a good symbiotic relationship with those plants. It's a great thing to have. It's got organic matter, which holds on to nutrients and water. It's got fluff and aeration, so it holds on to oxygen in the soil, which is so important. It's just a very, very vital thing to have in your soil. So even though our soil is nice and dark, and I'll show you guys a close-up of our soil, what we're going to do is we're going to come by here because my soil does not need to be topped off. I just topped it off this spring. What I'm looking to do is to do a general re-amending of the soil, bring more fertility and nutrients and minerals back into the soil. I want to re-amend so that I'm actually fostering that good ecology. All right, so the first soil amendment that we really love and totally stand by is worm castings. We prefer a very high chitin content worm casting. Now what chitin is, it comes from food scraps. So primarily fruit and vegetable waste produces chitin. Now chitin helps with your soil health. It helps with soil, the microbes in the soil, the beneficial bacteria and fungi use the chitin, and it helps to create a much more well-balanced soil. Not all worm castings are created equal. One that is high chitin is actually going to be far better than worm castings that come from high carbon. Worm castings that have a lot of carbon were usually fed things like cardboard or paper scraps. And that's basically the equivalent of you eating rice every single day. Rice isn't bad, but it's just pure carbs. It's not something that's actually going to sustain you and give you nutrients and vitality. So fruit and vegetable scraps is like you eating a salad every day. You know, you should eat a salad, you should eat more salad than you do things like rice because it has a lot more nutrients, a lot more minerals in it. And that's what you get from a high chitin diet. So we prefer a high chitin worm castings, and we actually do sell these worm castings over at MIgardener.com, and they are great. I absolutely swear by them, and we sell them by the bag full, and a little bit goes a very long way. What we'll do is we will either, if we have plants growing, we'll use the worm castings, like let's say we have some perennials and we want to get the garden ready for fall, we'll actually soak the worm castings and make a worm tea. We'll use that to soak our perennials and really drench the soil. In the case of our raised bed back here, we would just take, say, this 2 to 2.5 pound bag, and we'll spread it over the top of this entire raised bed. That's about all the worm castings we need because we're not using this as a growing medium. I think of worm castings less as a growing medium and more like a supplement or a vitamin for your soil. That's because there's so many nutrients and minerals packed into this, as well as beneficial bacteria and fungi. The beneficial bacteria and fungi found in worm castings is about 7 times more than compost. 7 times more. The next thing we really love is we love azomite. I absolutely love azomite because it's a ground rock dust, and it provides so many trace minerals. Trace minerals are something that's depleted from our soil. And when you look at your compost, so much compost comes from, say, grass clippings or wood chip mulch, which is good. But it's much like we talked about with the worm castings, where a lot of that is carbon-based. It's going to give your soil good fluff. It's going to give your soil good organic matter. But it's not going to be super dense in minerals. And minerals come from clay. And so the azomite actually comes from a clay-based rock that they grind up, and you actually get way more minerals. That's why growing in clay is something that we say is a benefit as long as you can break it up, as long as you can amend the clay to be soft enough to grow in and accept water, accept roots, and really become a growable medium. Clay is great. That's why people down south and the west side of the state, where there's a lot of clay, they do very well because it's so mineral rich. And that is what azomite provides. And so in a raised bed of this size, this bed is 3 feet by 12 feet, so 36 square feet, we're gonna use about 1.5 pounds, so about half this bag. Another thing that we absolutely swear by that we use as well as sell is Trifecta Plus. Now, if we're going to plant something here, we will apply a heavy dosing of Trifecta Plus. The reason why is because Trifecta Plus gives the beneficial bacteria and fungi. This has been inoculated with beneficial bacteria and fungi colonies, so it will give you all the benefits you're looking for there. It also has high NPK as well as trace minerals. And so that's a very well-rounded feeding that's going to feed plants that you're going to plant here. So we're actually going to plant radishes here. And so we will definitely come back and we'll put some of this in the soil. Now, I will not use this very liberally. I won't, spread this over top of the soil crazy if I'm not going to be planting anything here. I might use a little bit, but I use it sparingly because, if you're not growing anything there, there's no sense in having it in the soil. I'd apply it in the spring when you go to plant something. The next thing that we use are humic acids. Now, I love down-to-earth brand humic acids. They're great. I just so happen to grab this little 1 pound box because I actually have a 50-pound bag on the way. They sell big bags of this stuff, and it just isn't here in time. So I went to my local garden center and just picked up the small box for a prop. But this 1 pound box here will actually do probably about most of my raised bed here. So I'll do 1 pound per 36 square feet. And humic acids are great. Every living thing, whether it's a fungus or a bacteria, uses these humic acids. And these acid compounds are so vital. Now I get the question, Luke, will this raise the pH of my soil? The answer is no. This will not raise the pH of your soil. This will not make it more acidic. Or sorry, lower the pH, raise your acidity. This will not raise your acidity at all. So you don't have to worry about doing a pH test or anything like that. Humic acids are vital and I recommend adding them. And then the final thing that I love to add, if you cannot find your azomite, if you cannot find some source of trace minerals, use kelp meal. I love kelp meal, and the reason why is because kelp comes from the ocean. They mine this up and they actually dehydrate it and grind it down, and they turn it into a meal, a powder. And I love kelp because kelp is a very rich source of trace minerals. Most trace minerals are found in the ocean because all of the land mass, North America, Asia, Africa, Australia, South America, every body of land runs into the ocean. And when you have the runoff, it dissolves in the water. And when the kelp grows in the water, it actually grows and takes up those minerals. And so when you use it on your garden, you're getting all of those minerals. It's actually one of the highest concentrations of trace minerals that you can find. It has a higher concentration than azomite. The only downside is that it's a little bit more expensive than azomite is. So if you can't find it, I use this. This also has a good amount of potassium as well as nitrogen, so you're going to get a little bit of nutrients from this, but I use this as my trace mineral source if I can't get my hands on some azomite. Okay, so the first thing that I always do is I always kind of break up the topsoil crust. My bed has been bare for about a week and a half now since we harvested our potatoes. And the thing that we need to do is we need to break up that crust because it really will help to accept the soil amendments that I'm going to use. Now, this is not digging your soil. People always ask, well, what if I go no dig? What if I try to never irritate my soil? You don't have to dig these in really deep. And in fact, they're better if you don't dig them deeper because you want them right where your plants are going to be. If you dig them deep in your soil, yeah, your soil is going to be great 8 inches down, but there's very few roots that get 8 inches down, especially if you're starting with seedlings. I prefer to amend the top layer of soil and let the soil amendment work down through my soil rather than flip it. So you don't need to dig these into your soil. So again, I use about half this bag over these 36 square feet. It's very dusty, so I'm going downwind so it blows away from me. And a little bit goes a very long way, like I said, so you don't have to go heavy on it. Now the next thing I'm going to use is my bag of humic acid. Now the humic acid, I'm going to use the entire 1 pound. I'm going to use the entire 1 pound over this raised bed here. And again, buy a bigger bag. It's going to save you money and it's going to stretch a long ways. I needed something for this video. So the next thing I'm going to use are my worm castings. I'm going to use this 2 pound bag over top of these 36 square feet. And that is the last thing that I'm going to do to this raised bed if I'm not planting anything. I'm just going to kind of work it into the soil by giving it just a gentle raking. And that's all I'm going to do to this raised bed. But since I'm planting radishes here, I want to give them some additional nutrients, give them a really good jump start. Now I'm actually going to use some Trifecta because I'm going to be planting something. Again, if you're not planting anything, you don't have to use Trifecta because it would be kind of just a waste. It'd sit in your soil and you might lose some of it throughout the winter. So just keep that in mind. All right, so now we're going to use some Trifecta. All right, and there we go. That is good. Right? And so this is a 3 pound bag. I used about half of it over the course of those 36 square feet. So there you go. It is that simple to re-amend your soil and the reasons to do it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. If you have any questions, make sure to post them in the comments box below. And as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow big or go home, and we'll catch you all later. See ya. Bye.